G'day, guys. Welcome to a brand new week of TTR UK Session with Ash and myself. Ash should be joining us very, very shortly. And another big week, of course, coming up in particular for the pound as we look for another vote, another Brexit vote, another week, another Brexit vote. And that, of course, happens tomorrow. Ash will fill us in on the time of all that taking place when he joins us in a few moments, as I say. Let us take a look at the Forex factory, shall we? Just to see what's going on around the place in terms of news and little dates and times to remember. Okay, Forex factory onto my screen, share my screen, and you guys should be able to see it in a matter of, well, I won't say milliseconds because nothing happens in milliseconds over here. It's all a bit of a slow motion thing. But with any luck, you should be able to see that in just a tick. And no doubt, as diligent day traders, you'll probably have already looked at this, and hopefully that is the case. It is Monday, the 11th of March, and in medium to strong impact news, we have a couple of things, and both of them, well, sorry, we have a couple of things. One of them, which is actually a dual thing, will be influencing what happens with the dollar and its counterparts, or competitors, or whatever you choose to call them. Retail sales is the figure that will be released. We've got a star on both of these. What does it mean? Sources postponed data release indefinitely. New release time pending. Okay. So why is it still there? That's interesting. So one would assume that this one's going to be exactly the same as that. Sources postponed data release indefinitely, new release time pending. Okay, I would have thought then that they would have left those out. But anyway, at least they've let us know that that's not going to happen. So at 12:30 p.m. UK time, you can relax. Assuming that's correct. And at 1 p.m. UK time, we have member, or the Monetary Policy Committee member Haskell, talking to us about something or other. What might that be? Due to speak at the University of Birmingham. Okay. I'm thinking that won't be too dramatic and won't cause the market to move too much. Tomorrow, or overnight in some cases, we've got Jerome Powell talking again. What's he saying this week? He's delivering the opening remarks at the National Community Reinvestment Coalition's Just Economy Conference in Washington, D.C. One would think that won't be too much as well. He was actually on 60 Minutes in the US overnight. Didn't say too much, as to my knowledge, that we don't already know. Of course, he refused to go into contact with Donald Trump in that interview, but did repeat, of course, that the Fed won't be influenced by Donald Trump or anybody else. They are totally independent, and Trump, he hasn't got the power to dismiss me, said he. We'll see about that, Jerome, because I've got a funny feeling Donald will take up the challenge of that at some stage. We will see when he gets over his little chats with Xi Jinping, and what else has he got on his agenda at the moment? I think he's done with Kim Jong Un. He's probably thinking, what is he thinking? Trade wars is definitely at the top of his list, I would mention at the moment. So, Jerome, I think you've waved a red flag in bull, old mate. We'll see how that goes. And later in the week, or later in tomorrow, we've got, as I said, massive week for the pound. GDP figures, core CPI coming out, or CPI coming out as well, on the dollar tomorrow. But tomorrow, there's actually two big things. I don't know about the budget though. It's kind of going to be overshadowed by what happens here in the Brexit votes and forecast to be a reject. I know that was last time. There's no forecast. No one's having a crack at that one. Interesting. Ash will have a crack at it in a minute. Happy birthday, mate.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Thank you, mate. Yeah, I forgot myself this morning. I came downstairs, had about half an hour just sort of like meandering around, and then I got a message came, and then yeah, it all kind of dawned on me.
Oh my goodness. How easily will that get? Is it you don't want to remember anymore? Is that the case? That's the case with me.
No, it's just not on my. I suppose it just doesn't become on your mind anymore, does it? I kind of I went out yesterday with some mates, and I suppose I'd put it to one side. I don't know your own birthday. I don't know whether your own birthday stays important or not, but it hasn't really to me.
No, not that much. As you get near
My
to
daughter's birthday, it's a different day. What's that, mate?
as you get nearer to a pension age, it does.
Yeah, less so.
Well,
Yeah, my daughter's birthday is important because it's I don't know, sort of every birthday's a celebration, isn't it, when you're young? But every birthday as you get older, it's more of like, uh-oh.
yep, shit, here we go again. Another one.
Yeah, yeah. Tick another one off.
Yeah,
I'll start the cycle again,
another foot closer.
So
bloody hell.
exactly. So maybe that's the reason. I don't know, but not that I'm morose about it. It just isn't really something that's the forefront of my mind anymore, I suppose.
Fair.
I've got other exciting
enjoy-
things, you see.
enjoy the rest of it when it's able to be done after a couple of trading shows today. What's going on apart from Theresa May tomorrow, mate?
Oh, fascinating day Friday. I don't know if you remember my trade last week, but I was looking for downside, and the market kept pushing up, but I held on in there, and eventually the market turned around and gave me a decent move down. So it ended up working out a decent trade.
Good.
But it keep going. Interestingly, it held. Oh, in fact, let me bring my charts up here. So held at a level that actually was another interesting level to try and get back in at, and I'll show you what was going on. But just a fascinating. Oh, hold on, that's the wrong screen, isn't it? Oh no, it's just not me. There we go. So I was in. Where was my bar? This one here. I was in over here. So I ended up going in twice. I went in here, and I went in at 70 up here. And obviously, with both of them coming through, I ended up getting out a weekly pivot. I can't unfortunately claim that I got in right at the lows, but this trade entry ended up being the real trade entry. This top line, that was the really good one. This one was just for a little bit of profit, but it worked out really well. I think they totaled around about 80 pips, 85 pips. The net move was about 85 pips in the end, but there was still more to go. It dipped to the downside. I did actually have this level or this area kind of marked off as a potential turning point, but I didn't really suspect that it would all about turn, which is exactly what it did. I thought we point and it would be all kind of done, that the move to the upside would be done, but that didn't happen, and it kept surging forward, and it's kept surging forward this morning. But the numbers out of America weren't particularly good. We had trade balance from China that wasn't very positive. We had jobs data, which was a bit odd. I don't know if you saw the NFP, but it was a strange NFP report.
Yeah.
And release. 20, I think it was, wasn't it? Which is the weirdest number. But now really we're
zero off actually.
What's that, mate?
I think they might have left a zero off actually.
They may well. Well, that's the only explanation, isn't it? I can't see how they came up with the number 20. So the rest of the jobs report was pretty good. Average earnings was up. Unemployment was down. So another reason that I thought there would probably be something of a bounce if nothing else was going to tip it over. Chinese stocks, from what I gather, have been a little bit mixed overnight. Or sorry, Asian stocks have been a little bit mixed overnight, but Chinese stocks have been pretty good. So that would suggest that we probably headed for more upside. So I'm really looking for retracements into the weekly pivot, or maybe even as low down as this the daily pivot for some further upside. The pattern on the 4-hour chart probably is a little bit more interesting, maybe not quite as clear to see. Let's have a quick look on the clean chart here. Maybe a head and shoulders pattern, left shoulder, head, right shoulder, possibly, but a left shoulder, which is really effectively 2 bars, is going to be a lot more tricky to trade, even though I'm sure that's being seen. I'm sure that pattern is actually being looked at out there as a potential turning point. We do have an area of previous support that would probably become resistant. So I would suspect there's probably some downside here. But looking at the rest of the picture, I think upside is probably all we can go for. When we look at this daily chart, we had the attempt push to the downside, and this is where these bars do become quite interesting. Not a low test bar, but just because of the way that price ended up not closing below
Mm-hmm.
the turning point here, if you like, on the daily chart. This bar is fairly significant. I think we probably will have to see a bit more detail, and what you just said about Brexit may well be what this hinges on. It doesn't seem that Theresa May has got a chance to get this through, and I've just read a headline that said that she is pleading effectively with Europe to heave this over the line, and I think it's worth taking into account if we've got time, or should we come back to it? I don't know what you want to do about the Brexit detail, because the vote is tomorrow, so we need to be on top of what the news may be and what it may hold. But I don't know if you want to deal with that a little bit later, or whether you want to deal with it now.
Maybe we should wait a little bit. Get
Yeah,
these trades that we were in last week out of the way, and then have a
yeah.
look at the hour, see if there's something to go into, and then I think maybe the second half hour we can get into that.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, talking of something, do we want to get into? This is going to be a little bit difficult for me. I'm going to hold on for upside now. Look for a little bit more upside because of what happened at the end of last week. Whether it's wise to get in today is going to be the question. So I think that's going to have to unfold a little bit. So I'll let you have a look through some charts and see if I can dig around and see if I can get a position on this about timing more than direction. I think.
Yeah, look, speaking about timing, it was all about that last Thursday when I left you. I'll have a look at those 2 trades we left you with, actually. One was the breakout trade, and the other was a little intraday euro pound trade, which turned out to be pretty tricky. And it's so frustrating when you're trading small time frames and the show ends, because to manage these things sometimes is a little bit tricky, and this one was. I'm hoping that you guys who followed the trade actually survived it, because it was a little bit tricky, as I say. Depend on where you take your profit on these small smash and grab trades, which is all they are, because you're really trading from here to here, and that's it. You're in here, you're out there, and there is no more. That's all she wrote, and that's exactly what the trade was. But it was a little bit tricky. We entered here at the top of this bar, and I missed the first take profit, which is normally on a trade of this size at 6 pips. I think the risk was 12 or something like that, if my memory serves me correctly. Wasn't even that. Maybe it was by the time the spreads were added. So at 6 pips, should have taken profit. I didn't. I missed it. I was having dinner at the time, I think, and came back to see that it was still hovering in this area and not having taken profit. So what I did was move my stops to entry immediately, and that turned out to be a wise decision, as this candle came back on us and the next one would have taken out the stop. But that candle there then became tradable. I didn't trade it, I must admit, so I missed the profit on the trade. but I did survive it, and that's my hope with you guys. If you were following it, that you actually either A, took profit, or did as I did and moved stops to entry, because I missed the TP1, I missed taking the TP1. So that was the story on Euro Pound on the 30-minute trade. We're still hanging in there on the daily. Now I'm going to watch this candle closely. My stops are at entry on the daily trade, remembering that we traded this bar here. Was it this bar here? This bar here is the one we traded. No, it's not. It doesn't look right. How long have we been in this? 2 weeks? 1 week, 2 weeks. Entry here. Oh, that was the bar. Right, okay. That was the bar we traded, this one. And our stops are now at that entry level, or maybe even more. I'll see how this today and make a judgment call on that tomorrow going into the Brexit vote. I don't know. We'll have a talk about this, as we said, in a little bit. I really don't know which way this is going to go at the moment, to be fair. So, given what I said from the outset, that I wouldn't look to change anything until we hit this level here, which is now what, 230 odd pips away. I think I'll stick with that at the moment, but things may be taken out today. You don't know, but we'll see, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. It would have to be a fairly big day for the euro and a sad day for the pound again today for that to be the case. The other thing that we traded was the breakout trade that we left you with on Thursday, and that worked out pretty fine. Our entry was here. We got through TP1, which was 1-to-1. We took that, and we're now free trading this, of course, because our stops are an entry. In fact, we're better than free trading. We've banked, so the worst thing that can happen is we'll keep a little bit of money. The best thing that can happen is we just keep on going. This is euro dollar, of course, and that too will be affected by what takes place tomorrow in the Brexit vote. So both the euro pound and euro dollar, this one in particular, looks like it may be under threat. That is the trailing stop. But we're protected by the weekly pivot to some degree, and if that's the case, technically, we should be okay. If not, we'll still be okay, even if having our stock is taken out. So they were really the only trades that I think I took last week. So result was okay, as long as you manage that euro pound little snipe long that we took. In terms of today, look, it is a little bit tricky on the euro and the pound, I've got to say. We're having a look at the pound chart. There it is. Let me get rid of this. But it's had a bit of a strong correction. I'll put it that way at this point. Has the pound since it took off on the back of this double bottom, then that beautiful retracement that we were looking for. That was the key to this, I believe, to trading this anyway. Was this area here. So now it's kind of on its way back, or is it? Is this the retracement on the overall move since early December? Good question, isn't it? And I'm not too sure that technically we're going to be drawing the correct conclusions here, because it's not got a lot to do with technicals after today, I don't think, and maybe even not today. I don't think it's got a lot to do with technicals. That said, you can see what we bounced off, and that was pretty clear. The 132 level pretty much is where that red line is, and we didn't want to go above there, it seems, on cable just yet. Maybe is the call I hear everyone saying. Big reversal here, big reversal bar here as well, confirming that move to the top. That was the one that we were looking for, that big retracement. And now if that gets taken out, everything's back to square one, I believe. But as it stands, that still rules from a technical point of view. That double bottom followed up by the higher low, which was beautiful. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. That's absolutely gorgeous. If you see that on any chart, you'd be wanting to trade it, that's for sure. Depending on if you trailed your stop, you may still be in that or otherwise. But at this point in time, as I say, technically we're still bullish the pound, and I'll continue to trade like that, but maybe not today or even tomorrow. I'm a little bit cautious around these pairs because there'll be opinions and there'll be trading into this announcement or this vote tomorrow. I've got no doubt about that. I don't think the market will sit still. I think there'll be opinions, so I think there'll be quite a little bit of a ride today, which is unusual for a Monday on both the pound and the euro. So I'm probably going to turn my attention away from both those major pairs and concentrate on things like the Aussie, maybe dollar yen, but the Aussie will be very much in front of my eyes, and I note that I'm in a fairly decent position at the moment, given that we've now come back into this range. We're now above the weekly pivot. Gee, this would be a good setup. If this can continue, let's go to the 4-hour chart. If this can continue its little journey here, reject the weekly pivot and come and give me a retest or back test, as Ash calls them, on the daily pivot here with a nice reversal bar, gee, I think that'd be a good trade. Aussie long, and I'm not sure why I'm saying that because it's been in terrible trouble, but I think that would be a good trade on the back of this bullish engulfing bar, double bottom if you like. We may have probably already got a higher low, but that's not tradable for me. There's no way I can trade that, but I need something here. I'd really like to see a rejection of the weekly pivot, come back to the daily, give me the higher low. That would be the trade for me. So I'm kind of concentrating on the Aussie pairs today, Ash, and steering away a little bit from pound and euro because I think they might be just a little bit tricky to trade.
Yeah, I think that's sensible. We will, as I say, get to some Brexit news and Brexit update. Tomorrow's vote is pretty key. There's not a great deal of news that would suggest that Theresa May is going to get her vote through, but we will have a look at that and just see if we haven't missed something. I do see an inverted head and shoulders on your chart there, which would suggest that yeah, that daily pivot would be a good area. Also, probably worth talking about some shares and
it's my little what's the name?
Well, the one that's the share that you were bringing to us.
Yeah, what was that called?
It was called. I've got Pod Point in my head. Yeah.
Traded it, guys, right? Shivers. I'll do a bit of backtracking. I can't remember what it was.
What's that? Well, the name of it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to bring a couple of shares that have been in the news over the weekend as well, and have a look at those. I mean, we're going to. What's that, mate?
I remembered it after you.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to talk a little bit about Nvidia. We're going to talk about Bitcoin and the like in a moment, and Nvidia. Because of Bitcoin and a little deal that they seem to have done as well, which I think brings those shares into a much more interesting area. And also Boeing. I think we need to talk about Boeing after the Ethiopian air crash disaster that happened. So I think we should bring Boeing forward and see what's happened with Boeing, because obviously the probability is morning we are going to see a dive bomb in Boeing, and what I want to see is does that release of a crash in an aircraft actually provide a buying opportunity, and it's always awful when you're talking about potentially making a profit on the back of a disaster, but that's just the way that many of these things happen. When things go wrong, you tend to get opportunities, and as I say, it's just an unfortunate fact of investing. But we have to look at it and just see. It's not necessary that we are going to buy anything, but I think it's worth us just being aware of what causes these movements and what causes these opportunities. It doesn't have to be a disaster. It could just be that some shares have put in some awful numbers, or a product has been recalled, like the VW situation, where a lot of their cars were recalled after the diesel scandal and the testing scandal in their computers. So the emission scandal, I should say. So we should have probably have a look at Boeing. We should probably have a look at Nvidia as well, and see what that may well do to the share price. And we should have a look at Bitcoin. So, and we need to look at Brexit. So now we've got around about 3 minutes before the market open. Do we need to do anything for the market open, or do you need to do anything for the before that market open? Did you want to check any other charts before that happens?
No, I don't, because I don't trade the first 30-minute candle of UK session, unless there's exceptional circumstances. I don't have any circumstances. Oh, that other stock, Telga Resources.
Telga, that's right.
Went from 48 cents when we first looked at it last Wednesday. It's now at 66.
Right, so a huge gain in Telga. Okay.
33% in the last 5 days.
Okay. All right, so we'll maybe have a look at that a little bit later as well. So let's just quickly cover the FTSE.
I'll cry.
Well, if it goes, well, there'll be opportunities, mate, as you know, that they will continue to happen.
I said I wouldn't buy it. It might have been a nice little trade, but we need a lot more information on that before we buy it.
Yeah, I think you're right. So let's just quickly cover the FTSE and what's likely to happen here at the open. There's certainly signs and signals that the FTSE will probably dip first. Now, the question really with the FTSE is, do the dipping areas become buying opportunities, or is this actually signaling that we are at a high? Now, there are certain charts, the 4-hour significantly is suggesting that this may well be a high. But because of the bar that closed last Friday, I think there's going to be still some buyers that would suggest that this may well be a high, which drifts down. This, I think, weekly pivot would be a shade expensive, but I think if it drifts down to near the daily pivot or somewhere between the two pivots, I think there's probably much more of a likelihood that could be an area that we should maybe have another push to the upside. Now, this daily pivot looks probably, I think, the best area, because even though we'll do a fib on this in a second, but even though there is obviously some support here, there's some support here, so coming down around about 20 to 15 pips. There's some support in these areas. No, you could just sell this off at this area, because there's certainly a strong suggestion that the scalpers are going to have a field day here, because the market is at a high. We're just about to open. There's some signs and signals of weakness. Now, you watch this drop, and you watch the scalpers take advantage of this drop now. And the likelihood is that those scalpers will be aiming for the weekly pivot. Now, if it goes beyond the weekly pivot, then the buyers will start to become pretty interested in this stock. Look at it come down here. So you watch the scalpers now. Some of them will take profit here. Some of them will hang on to see if they can get a lower price. And as I say, the daily pivot looks like a fairly interesting area for a pickup. So I think we need to let this unfold, see what's going to happen, and see whether the weekly pivot does hold it up for a period, or whether it just crashes through. But then we need to look for signs and signals that it's going to be holding somewhere along here. But certainly this area does look like an intraday high at least. You know, I'd be very surprised if it takes off from this particular point before pushing down first. How far away is that? I mean, that's only 3 pips away from the weekly pivot, but that would be a pretty tetchy trade. But yeah, the scalpers, I think, are gonna enjoy this first push this morning anyway. So probably let this unfold. See what happens with the FTSE 100. See if we can get a better buying area. The data from the weekend will probably be revised, and we'll get some detail on that. Jerome Powell has come out and said that patience is going to be pivotal to the next rate decision in the US. So we'll get a fairly clear indication of whether the rate hikes or holds will have an effect of some sort on stocks, on the stock market. Certainly, right now, it suggests that the Fed is much more likely to affect the stock market positively than negatively. So we're probably still looking for upside. The China situation hasn't really kind of given us any further clues about what's happening there. So we have to trust that the previous announcements of there being a deal in the offing or in the making is probably likely. So that also is positive for
Actually,
stock.
up to there. Is there a date on that? 29th? Rings a bell.
Yeah, that's the certainly the date I've heard too. I've heard that I've heard that the 29th is probably the likely date for there to be an announcement of a meeting between the two parties, maybe to ratify the eventual deal. But we'll probably get something before that. So there's that in the news as well. So you have to kind of look around and say what is going to push this down, even though the 4-hour chart does certainly suggest that we are at a high. What's going to push this down so significantly that the trend turns here? And I'm not sure what it is. So I think we need to just continue to look for upside. Obviously, want that better price. The daily pivot looks like the most sensible area to me. And if it does come down to the daily pivot, certainly if it drifts down here by US Open, then we may well take that on. Brexit could be a factor, and that may well be our driver as well. The fact that we've got all that background information from the US can only really help the FTSE. So now it's going to be about the value of the pound, and the value of the pound will likely come off if Theresa May doesn't get her deal through, at least initially. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to weaken it wholesale, but it certainly suggests that initially Theresa May failing to get her deal through would probably be negative for the pound, which we're going to just quickly have a look at, because people just want the certainty to come back into play. Now, what we do need to
be the case, and the market seems to have been pricing that in the last couple of days.
Yeah, and there's got to be so, the dates we have to put into our diary. Christos just asking, give an opinion on TNDM Biotech. 1,000% in a year. Wow, my goodness. 30% in the last 3 weeks. Yeah, we'll certainly have a look at that as well. TNDM, if I can find it on my system, that is. It's a stock that I'm not aware of. So let's have a look at that. Back to Brexit. Yeah, so the 3 dates we have to put in our diary. Now, this is really key, and it may well drive us away from trading this week. I'm not sure. But tomorrow we have the vote in Parliament. Theresa May's deal is going to be voted on, hopefully for the last time, but you never know the way she is. On Wednesday, there is then a vote on whether there will be a no-deal Brexit. Now, that is going to be the key vote for the pound. So it might be that tomorrow is a bit of a damp squib where everybody focuses on the date of the vote as the key aspect. It may be a bit of a red herring, because the no deal aspect of what's about to happen is much more pivotal. So if Theresa May's deal gets voted down and then they vote to take no deal off the table, what that is then suggesting is that the Brexiteers have well and truly lost their grip on the possibility of a Brexit at all. That would suggest that Brexit's not going to happen.
What if she gets it through? This second vote doesn't happen.
If she gets it through, then we leave on the 29th of March.
Right. So Wednesday becomes a non-event. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the 3 events we need is if she gets it through, we're gonna see some movement. If she doesn't get it through, I think it may well be a bit of a red herring. So we got gets it through 29th of March, doesn't get it through, goes to Wednesday. If on Wednesday they vote to take no deal off the table, then we're kind of back in this guessing game. If they don't vote to take no deal off the table, we leave on the 29th of March with no deal. On Thursday, there is a vote on the extension. So if no deal is taken off the table, then they will vote on an extension to Article 50 on the Thursday, which will likely go through if no deal's off the table and Theresa May's deal hasn't gone through. So that's really the chain of events that we've got for the next 3 days. So the first, every single one kind of needs to be ticked. Every single one has the chance to stop the next vote.
But number one, tomorrow stops the lot, doesn't it? That's it.
Yes. Yeah, tomorrow stops the lot. Absolutely. So let's have a look at the pound.
Oh, of course, sorry, just making that a little clearer. If the vote is yes tomorrow to Theresa May's deal, it stops the lot. Otherwise, it triggers the others.
Yes. Yeah, just to be absolutely clear, Theresa May is bringing her deal to Parliament tomorrow, and the deal is the deal that will see us leave the European Union on the 29th of March. If Parliament votes yes for Theresa May's deal, then that is going to then be solidified as the terms that we leave. So that is then going to be the terms that we leave on, and that will happen on the 29th of March. We need no extensions. We need no further votes.
Bloody hell, I got my fingers crossed.
What, that it goes through?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, mate, obviously from my perspective, I've got my fingers crossed that it doesn't, but that's not because of trading. Yours is a trading bias. Yeah, my bias is all about the country, and my bias is incredibly concerned that this Brexit scenario is going to happen. I'm still hoping it doesn't happen, and it's not only because I don't agree with it, but I think mainly my concern is that the lack of information when the first vote was taken doesn't leave me with too much confidence that we should be leaving right now. If if the second vote came in, and with people still kind of voting to leave, with the information they had, they voted to leave. That would kind of make me feel a little bit differently. Probably not a great deal, but a little bit differently, because at least I'd feel that people were informed about the choice, and they've made a decision which was informed. But the fact that people weren't the first time around, and they're still going through with this Brexit, and also Brexit that is completely unrecognisable to what the initial vote was about. Would also concern me. So I'm kind of got my fingers crossed it doesn't happen.
Yeah, totally.
But let's
sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
No, mate, I think that's fair, because when it comes down to it, I think a lot of people are rightly fed up and tired and bored of Brexit, and that certainly anybody outside of Britain, and anybody outside of the concern that's going on is probably rightly bored and tired of Brexit. So I completely get your position. So the pound has to get through this level, which is going to be the daily pivot for us to really start. Now, this is quite a clean line. Now, you and I were both calling, I think, maybe not you, but I was certainly calling for the pound to be looking like it was going to be moving to the upside from, I think it was this area here, or it was this area, maybe around this area here. No, I'll tell you what it was. It was me. I said that I think the pound looks like it could go higher, and I can't remember exactly where it was. But you said you've got to be careful of the daily pivot, and you were absolutely right, because the daily pivot refused the price, and the pound continued to move to the downside. Now, when we look at this on longer term timeframes, incidentally, the FTSE is edging higher rather than lower. So at this stage, it still needs a little bit of time to turn this around, which I still believe will probably happen, but it's not happened as yet. Now, this is where the pound's at. We've got a bit of a move to the downside from this area of support, a potential for a belt hold. Now, a belt hold is a bar that gaps down and then closes at the high. It's got to be, fairly large would be the wrong word. It can't be just a tiny little bar, basically. It can't be just a little body bar. It's got to have a little bit of a body to it. It's got to have a medium-sized body, if you like. But you really want to take a clue on this, and you don't see bell holds very often. So they are significant bars, and I could show you a couple, but this is a significant bar where the market is closed on a Friday. It gaps down on a Monday. Now it doesn't have to be a Friday to a Monday. It can be from one day to the next. It doesn't matter, but it would more often happen over a weekend. So the market with foreign exchange, that is, the market is closed on a Friday, gap down. If this closes near its high, that, no matter the fact that it is broken through this area of support, is a bullish signal. So we need to see what is the general view of the market by the end of today, and this particular bar will give us a really good indication. Now that does suggest that we can't be trading this today at all. We could, I suppose, and then look for the belt hold to finish, but it wouldn't be wise, and it might be a little bit early. And considering the amount of upside, I think it's fine to hold on here. So let's see what this bar eventually gives us, and have a look at some of these lines along here, suggesting whether the belt hold is in an area which would potentially turn anyway. Yeah, so this line here is suggesting that the belt hold is in a potential area of support. So this could be a bit of a journey for the pound today. The fact that we've got a significant vote in Parliament tomorrow, leaving the market in an area of indecision, would suggest that it's unlikely to crash through an area of support. It's much more likely to get through that area of support after a decision is made than before. Could happen, but it's less likely, and it might be that the market wants to push down to this point before turning around. So this area is not an absolute given. So that's the first two things. Now the other thing is that we need to get to Brexit news and data. So here we go. Brexit talks between the UK and the EU remain deadlocked. So that's already suggesting that her deal is not going to get through. Downing Street has said just a day before MPs are due to vote on Theresa May's deal. So she's got 24 hours to turn this around. She's had the whole weekend to do this, and it's not happened. So that's certainly not looking likely. Mrs. May spoke to European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker on Sunday night after a weekend of negotiations, failing to find a breakthrough. Talks will resume on Monday morning with the aim of securing changes to the deal before Tuesday's vote. Possibly the 11th hour does actually see this pulled out the bag, but as I say, it looks less likely. BBC political correspondent Chris Mason said that the deal had not been substantially changed and the prospect of another big loss looms. The government has been seeking changes to the Irish backstop, the safety net designed to maintain an open border on the island of Ireland and only to be used as a last resort. But the details of it are a sticking point for many MPs when they voted for the deal in January. They worry that, in its current form, the backstop may leave the UK tied to the EU indefinitely. So the Brexiteers do not like this because it ties us to the EU indefinitely. The Remainers don't like it because they don't want to leave, so they're not going to vote for any deal. Pro-Brexit Environmental Secretary Michael Gove said while the Prime Minister's deal was a compromise, it should not be rejected for that reason alone. Mr. Gove also defended the backstop, saying that if it were... I mean, that's just one politician, so it doesn't really have that much sway. Former Minister Boris Johnson, maybe a little bit more significant, campaigned alongside Mr. Gove to leave the EU, said there was no way he would vote for the backstop in its current form. The UK will have less sovereign power to withdraw from the backstop than it has to leave the EU itself. It is quite a bewildering state of affairs, and I would completely agree with that from Boris Johnson, which is rare for me. So what could happen this week? If Theresa May's deal passes on Tuesday, the UK will leave the EU under the terms of the deal on the 29th of March. If it is rejected, MPs have been promised a vote on Wednesday on whether the UK should leave without a deal. If they then reject a no-deal Brexit, they could get a vote on Thursday on whether to request a delay to Brexit from the EU. If it reaches that point, Public Health Minister Steve Bryan said he would resign unless the Tory MPs are given a free vote on the issue. I would find it very difficult, actually impossible, to be part of a policy that was pursuing actively no deal, he said to BBC Radio 4. So watch the fireworks if Theresa May's deal doesn't go through, because it sounds like resignations may be aplenty. I mean, he's just one guy, but we've already seen a couple of defectors move positions. So tomorrow is huge, and I think probably Paul, I don't know what he's done about this, but I think he probably should close down everybody's account ready for. He has. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's going to be wise, and it may well keep me off this off the out of the markets as well.
Yeah, for a question that comes straight to mind. Let's say Theresa May's deal, which appears very likely, is voted down, and then Wednesday's no deal, if you like, is voted down, which leaves us with Thursday, which was vote to have Article 50 extended.
Yes.
What if that's voted
down? Well, so they don't choose to extend.
Yeah.
No, that's a fair question, mate, but it would be extremely unlikely.
It's unlikely. I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, given the state of events, I mean, you never know with this scenario, do you? Let's say that they choose to not request.
Is Wednesday's vote actually a de facto vote for Thursday? It probably is.
Yeah, I would say if they vote to take no deal off the table, then they've got to ask for an extension. It would be the craziest move in political history to say we're not going to have a deal from Theresa May, we're not going to have no deal, and we're still leaving on the 29th of March. It's just I think the equation would never add up.
But what has made sense throughout this whole 2-year process? Not a lot.
And that's where we are, isn't it? And that's the reason why that question is still valid, because none of it has made sense. It's been the craziest 2 years, or certainly year of parliamentary. Well, I was going to call it work, but it's not really. I don't know what they've been doing, but you know,
around all this.
Yeah, well, parliamentary mess. It's been 2 years of parliamentary mess. No clear planning, no clear idea of what's going on.
Bills have gone
just
bugger all.
This is the thing. So this puts you towards the Aussie, which I think is wise. I mean, if we are sort of like talking the pound, certainly when it comes down to the pound, you would suspect that this area of support would be a decent looking area to try and buy into.
Yeah, look, I think the question that we probably need to address is that, given it looks like come Thursday we'll have no change at all, except that asking for an extension of Article 50, and I guess there is another part to my question. There's a part B to the question. What if that's denied by the Eurozone?
That's another, which is another possibility, isn't it? That's certainly another possibility. Yeah, that the European Union just absolutely refuse for the UK to have that extension. That could happen.
That's it. So I guess that has to be the case then. So there is no deal. They do actually go through with no deal.
Yeah, which could happen. I mean, to be fair, no deal. If I was looking at it from an impartial point of view, which is quite tricky to do, but if I was looking from an impartial point of view, no deal really should be what happens on the 29th of March. Because what Theresa May has brought back is not what people voted for. When they voted for Brexit, they voted to leave the European Union. They didn't vote to have a deal. On the whole, people voted for us to become a free sovereign nation, be able to do free trade deals around the world. control our own borders, control of our own money, and no deal really is that position. It's not having a deal. Everybody knows that not having a deal could be catastrophic for this country and for the economy of the country. But when it comes down to it, what people voted for was a no deal Brexit, and I think if it got to the 29th of March, personally, I'd be much happier with a no deal than a deal.
All right,
I'd prefer to remain, but if we're not going to remain, I think no deal is the right thing to do.
that's what was voted for. Yep, agreed. Now let's put that back into trading. Let's say and I think we're pretty much in agreement that we will go to Thursday with a vote, and they will vote to extend Article 50. How do we trade that? And I'm not sure we can in those circumstances, but after Thursday, if let's say the Eurozone do exactly as I've just said and reject the extension to Article 50,
yeah,
where are we? We're in a different place.
Yes.
Most definitely.
Yes, we absolutely are. I mean, that particular scenario is incredibly unlikely because they've already said that they would have to extend Article 50. But let's say if we bring down every single aspect of this, Theresa May's deal going through will be likely be positive for the pound because it will give some certainty. Theresa May's deal being thrown out and rejected will be volatile, but probably not give us a clear direction. Wednesday's vote about voting it down no deal will be positive the pound if no deal is taken off the table. If no deal is left on the table, we leave on the 29th of March, and that will be extremely negative for the pound. So they're the two aspects that we need to be firstly aware of. The deal being extended after no deal being taken off the table will likely be positive for the pound because if no deal firstly gets voted on Thursday, so the European Union will not make a decision on Thursday whether we get the extension. That would just be through Parliament. So if they vote to extend Article 50 on Thursday, that will be likely be positive for the pound because it would suggest that Brexit may not happen. So I think we would need to find out what date it is that the European Union would decide on whether they would ratify that. But certainly from Parliament's perspective, if they vote for an extension, that's likely to be positive, certainly for the rest of the week.
Okay, got it, guys. It's crystal clear, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. What's crystal clear about it is that we shouldn't be trading the pound. I think that's that. Yeah, that's the takeaway. I would suggest that trading the pound would probably be kind of foolish at this particular point.
Yeah,
so
look, you could make a lot of money if you get it right.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely
true. That's true.
Yeah,
but you could also get yourself in horrible trouble.
Yeah, you absolutely can. Yeah, I mean, the only other thing is to see if you can let the vote happen and see if there's any kind of violent retracement, which there probably will be. There'll probably be some volatility, but you're just going to have to hold your nose and take a trade. If you were trading on your own accounts, then and you were so really keen to kind of get into this, then the only answer would be to trade something vicious. That means no setup. That means that you are trading purely on the assumption that you've got the correct feeling from the news, the correct result from the news. So that would be the only possible way to trade it.
Good luck, guys, if you're going to trade through that. But you shouldn't be doing it if you're trading on an ATW prop or educational account. You need to be out of the market because they're not going to wear your losses. That's for sure. If you do choose to trade that, goodness me, look at that chart. Doesn't that look like a big inverted head and shoulders to you?
What are we looking at?
I'm looking at the Aussie US dollar 30-minute chart.
Aussie US dollar. So we got CPI later on from, is that tomorrow?
From Aussie?
From the United States?
Yeah, we've got nothing on the Aussie this week, I don't think.
Yeah, the Aussie's quite interesting. So we'll get to that stock in a second that Christo was suggesting, but let's just have a quick look at the Aussie. The interesting thing for the Aussie, when I look at this daily chart, is this bar here. This bar here is the interesting one.
That was you're on daily chart. That was the rumor,
Yeah.
that China, in particular one of the provinces, I can't remember which one, or one port, was
Yes.
banning the import of Australian coal.
Yeah.
Which turned out to be bullshit at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why that candle looks like that.
Yeah. Interesting looking candle. I've just changed the color of that probably wrongly. So let's move it back to olive. Yeah, I mean it is an interesting bar, but the reason I find that interesting is that that really did provide some significant support, and that's exactly where we're back to.
Oh, look, at the same time that I think, was it unemployment numbers? There was a number came out at precisely the same time. They couldn't have announced that China deal, or sorry, that China rumor, if you like, at a better time, because the Aussie took off to the high side on the back of good news, and then within seconds went south side real fast.
Yeah.
On the back of that rumor, which of course would have incredible impact on the Aussie dollar and the Aussie trade deals if China shut down the ports of coal. No question there. But let me give you a little bit more insight into that. China own, when I say own, they've been given 99-year leases on at least 2 strategic coal ports in Australia. So they actually control the ports. And
right.
One of those is my old hometown, Newcastle, which is the, if my memory serves me correct, I'm trying to get this exactly right for you, but it's I'm in the right vicinity. It's the biggest turnover, I think, but it's in this ballpark, right, of coal exports in the world. So it's, if you like, it's the biggest export port for coal in the world, and that's controlled by the Chinese. So that announcement made absolutely no sense to me at all. Why would, if they're controlling the export of coal from Australia from that port in particular, but others are involved, why would they then turn around and ban the import of coal? It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make any sense at all. So that candle there is reflective of exactly that.
I mean, you see this this neckline as well, right?
Yep.
Are you looking for upside Aussie dollar?
Yes.
Yeah, I really like that. I think this is a great area. I don't know what setups people look for, but I would suggest that if Jeff has got a slingshot entry here, then you could find a much worse place to get in. You know, this would be a great area to get in, and if we've got a slingshot entry, then that would suggest to me that this is well worth trading.
Yeah, look, you could take a gigantic punt and trade on any dip here right now, but and I'm not far from there, to be absolutely frank. But what I do see is resistance where we are, weekly pivot. Should I take the chart? I think I should take the chart and show you exactly what I think. You maybe should be able to see the chart now. I'm not sure. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, so, got it.
Let me go to the daily chart, because that's where I begin my analysis, if you like. And my analysis tells me this. Yes, take that candle into account if you wish. I actually ignored that candle because of the reasons I've just said. But let's use where it opened, shall we? And put something through here and see if we can find anything that makes sense. No, I can't right now, because this was just a nonsense event in terms of the daily chart. We've got candles going high test, low test, low test, so there's nothing there that gives me any significance at all. And the reason I look for that is because if there is significance there, then someone will take over here. The bears will take over or the bulls will take over, but the market's completely indecisive here. I have no idea what that candle was. We're at Wednesday. What happened last Wednesday? That's the question I now ask myself, and I'll go back and have a look at that. So I would imagine that that's to do with an announcement of some kind, and if I'm right, then it's an emotive reaction. What's happened since is we have retested this level.
Yeah, wasn't that? Sorry, mate. It might be a guesswork, but wasn't that to do with the housing permits and the housing in Australia? Wasn't that when we got that really awful data from Australia?
Yeah, I think you're right. So that's what I would now do, is go back and have a look at that and say, well, why did that happen when we're at a support level and we didn't bounce? So that's where I'm at. But we now are at another support level. Use this low if you like, but certainly where that candle, inverted commas, went wrong down here, that's exactly where we are. We're exactly where that candle closed, which is amazing. Well, is it amazing? I don't think so. There's no fluke here. It's also, if you have a look at the level we're at, it's 0.7000 at the end of the day, and that's where we're bouncing from as well. This is a crucial level for the Aussie. 70 cents goes, we're probably looking at 65, or maybe 68 in the first instance. But if we go to the monthly chart, and forget all these double doses over here, I've got no doubt. Sorry, I've got no idea what that's all about. But suddenly we're down here at 63, maybe even down to 60 again. So it's a really crucial level for the Aussie where we are right now. And no surprise that we're going to get a bounce here for that reason, because people such as me who look at charts and say, well, okay, we're at an historic level here, guess what's going to happen? We're going to find support. Whether that's a reversal or otherwise is yet to be seen. But what I then use is the fact that we're back inside the range that we've been in since, well, September last year. And that makes sense to me suddenly from a technical point of view. So we're also at resistance, which, if you have a look at the 4-hour chart, is the weekly pivot. So what do I expect to happen here? Well, I expect that we're going to, as always, get a bounce of some kind off the resistance level, which is the weekly pivot. And where do I think that might go to? Support, which is, in this instance, the daily pivot. So that's not a mystery bag for me. That's exactly what I expect to happen. If it doesn't happen, then I don't get involved. But if it does happen, and we do come down to the daily pivot, I certainly get involved, because I think that would be an extremely good place to take a long. 2 reasons. Go back to the daily chart. It would tell me that, I wish I had a pen here so I can explain it to you better, but it would tell me that a retracement here down to a support level is the ideal place to go long, because the bears were in control and the bulls are now back in control if this candle in particular isn't taken out. So we've got the low here, we've got the high here, we want to see a bounce here, the daily pivot come into play, and a higher low put into place, which means we've got a bullish engulfing bar and a higher low. And that's exactly what I'm looking for every single time I trade off support or resistance. If I've got a bearish engulfing bar here, what am I looking for? Lower high. I've got a bullish engulfing bar here, what am I looking for? higher low. That's the way I trade. So this is now in a pretty prime position for me to look for a long. If
So
it goes and I miss it, shit happens. Yeah, mate.
Can I also bring attention back to this this Aussie yen as well, because this is kind of showing something similar, where we've got an obvious area of support. Now, just kind of thinking all the bits of information here, we got this something that looks a little bit like a hammer. It's a bit of a spinning top, but it looks like a hammer. Gap to the downside, moving back upside. Not a belt hold, because the belt hold needs to be closing, opening in its own area. But it certainly looks like a bullish looking bar here, which is engulfing the body of the previous bar. So an outside bar. So we get an outside bar here. And also, if we consider that the Aussie yen, according to Justin, and I've got no reason to doubt him, is a proxy for the stock market, that would also suggest, with bullish price action in the stock market, the Aussie yen may well be a decent Aussie pair to trade here.
Yeah, look, same applies for me, mate. If again you look at, and I trade ranges, right? That's what I do. And if I look at this chart, we've got a beautiful doji sitting there telling us call a low tester bar, whatever you like. It's absolutely on the bottom of that range. So I'm looking for exactly the same thing. I'm looking for a higher low in this vicinity, and that gets me long. At the moment, the way I trade, yes, I see the point, but I have to wait to trade it. And like all traders, you wait for your own setups and then you take it. So that's absolutely exactly the same scenario.
Okay. Chris is just saying that the Conservatives will ask Theresa May to resign. New leadership, new negotiations, and that's starting again. And that's according to The Guardian, which are a pretty good source. No EU compromises, or AG not happy with legal wording of agreement. Not sure who AG is. Then that's what we're likely to see. And this is interesting, isn't it? Because they've already had a leadership challenge to Theresa May, so they would have to just ask her if she would leave, and if she says no, they've got no comeback now, because they wasted their opportunity to get Theresa May out when Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is normally a very smooth and calculated operator, miscalculated and thought that he had enough votes to get rid of Theresa May back in December, and he didn't get her out. So this is the interesting wording here is ask, isn't it? That's the significant aspect of this. And if you know anything about Theresa May, as we do now, the likelihood that she will go because somebody asks her to is fairly remote. So, there would have to be a hell of a groundswell for that to end up happening. Which could, I know it could, but Theresa May is fairly dogged, so I'm not sure whether she would just happily step down. Now let's have a quick look at. So we're looking at Aussie pairs. Aussie yen looks really interesting to me. Aussie dollar also interesting, but I think Aussie yen I'd probably personally edge towards, just because if it is a proxy for the stock market, then I'd have a little bit more of an advantage with that, because I look at the stock market obviously much more. I just want to have a quick look.
Here's how I trade it, Mick. Just before you go on with that, I'll show you how I would trade it, if anybody's interested. So we'll start with Aussie yen. Two things I'm looking for. One would be, and this would be the best trade, but it's going to take a long time to develop, and that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. We would be looking for price to come down to here, and I'm always looking for a confluence area, obviously. So I need price to get down to here and show me something that says this support level is the support level. So I've already got, what do you call that, morning star, you guys?
Let's have a look. The morning star. Show me again.
Here?
Yes.
Yep. Bullish and gold at a higher low. Untradeable for me, couldn't trade that. But if I get a second opportunity to do that, then in particular off this confluence area, happy days, I'd look to trade that most certainly. But The very best case scenario would be if price came down to here, broke this trend line, gave me a little bit of consolidation in this area, don't take that low out, then pop back above this confluence area, retest it. That would be my turn. That's when I go long. That's the best case scenario.
I like that, yeah.
Another way to trade it, let me see if I've got a high up here. It's too far away anyway. Yeah, I don't really like the alternatives here. They're not great. It's already gone through that. What I'd look for on a bigger time frame would be a retest in this area. It's going to be the same thing on a smaller time frame. So answer no, it's probably not going to be available on a bigger time frame. So that's my best case scenario. The other alternative would be nothing I'm happy. Oh, yeah, maybe one. We could do exactly the same thing on a far shallower. No, we couldn't. Don't like it. But having put that on my chart, I'm looking now at what looks to me to be an ascending triangle, and also I've had a break and retest of that area. Too scary for me to go long here into the weekly pivot. Can't do it. But maybe, no, there's no maybe. I can't jump in here. I just can't. For that reason, there's strong resistance ahead of me.
That's interesting, isn't it? That ascending triangle, that would lead us beyond that monthly pivot, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Looks good. Just need a chance to get in. And
so should we get some shares?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, so Friday, Japan central bank may loosen monetary policy due to weak Japan economy, which again could be interesting for the Aussie.
Where do they go? They go, Christo? How can they listen?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we're not that aware of what tools they have, but I suspect some further buying of assets will probably be the only answer that they would have. I don't think they could continue to weaken the currency through rate cuts, because they're negative already, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Getting your head around that in the first place is a very difficult prospect.
Yeah.
Cutting negative interest rates is really stretching the friendship.
Oh my God! Imagine having a bank account in Japan right now. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at this. This is tandem diabetes care. Now I'm not sure why. Oh, okay, because of the jump that we've had so far this year, 1,000% in a year. 1,000%. Oh, yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, my goodness. Okay, we'll have to have a look further into this. So let's have a look on longer term timeframes and see what we have here. 20 years is okay. So it's a relatively young company. Just at an area of support, so that would suggest coming back down would be an area to try and get in. Just having a quick look at the financials with this one. Certainly the confidence is outperformed. They've got a target price of 68, which is not too far away from where we are now. So getting in here is not the answer. Not long enough to have any earnings per share. It's a young company, and if we're looking at young companies, then we would have a possibility. This EBIT margin isn't too good, so the higher the margin, the better. Look for steady or improving margins and compare with sector peers. So we might have to look at that. Actually, there is an improving margin, to be fair. It's still negative, but there's an improving margin here. We don't have a lot to go on, and it's one of those companies that, again, would be similar to the one that you brought to us, Jeff, where we'd be taking a bit of a punt on this. Now, if I was going to take a punt on this, and you're going to have to educate us a little bit here, Christo, when what has been announced about this company, because they are a medical device company that develops products for people with insulin-dependent diabetes. The firm has 3 key insulin pump products. The Slim, that doesn't really Now, the one thing I would find interesting about this is that, and what I like about looking at a new change in chairman. Okay, and I guess my question would be why they've changed chairman and who's the new guy. What's his story? Would be the first thing with that. The second thing that really comes to mind is that the world has changed in as much that we are much more likely to die of obesity than starvation now, on the whole, on average. And as obesity does get worse and worse, then diabetes is likely to pick up. So a company that has diabetes nullifying products will probably do fairly well in that kind of environment. So I'm not sure what the
Obesity trending though. I mean, we're becoming more aware of the ill effects of obesity, and we had this interesting conversation a few weeks back about sugar and its prospects versus what was it, coffee? Yeah, same kind of scenario.
yeah.
Um, as the world becomes more aware that obesity is a killer, how is that trend right now? I don't know. Are we becoming more aware, or are we still going to Macca's and doing our weekly shopping at McDonald's rather than the supermarket?
You will. Krista's saying that Asia now has a new disease, overeating, in a scale never seen before, and I think the awareness is a factor. But I suppose also as people get closer to that middle class kind of area, then if they've made that jump, the probably their most natural default setting is to start gorging and enjoying their newfound
Yep.
position. So I think awareness will potentially play a part, but I think that there's also probably something to be said for the fact that the world's wealth has probably significantly changed, and if people can use medication to try and avert any causes of their newfound desire to overeat, then they probably more likely use them.
Yeah.
Fastest growing in middle classes in China. Yeah, this is the thing, and obviously it's got a huge population. So I think this is an interesting one. I really like it. I don't know. I think the price is probably more like 47. I think we should keep an eye on it, and I'd appreciate Christo continuing to watch this one on a personal level and seeing if there's a chance that there's an opportunity here. But coming back to this area of confluence, where there is support, would be an area of interest. It's definitely one of those ones that you wouldn't put too much in again, because it's a newfound share and a newfound company. But if we're distributing money around the place, then this would be a really good consideration. I'd want to look at some of the other ones in this particular sector to find whether this would be the best opportunity. I'd want to see what the movements on the other stocks in this particular area are as well. My other question is there a more established company that has more established fundamentals that we could look at? And would that be a safer opportunity? That'd be the last thing with that I'd probably say. But I like it. I think there's an opportunity potentially there to have a look at that.
What's the date of the highs, mate?
The date of this high up here.
Yeah.
This high is 2014, in January 2014.
Okay, so wonder why we got up to there and why we're now down here.
That's a great question. Yeah, why is it? Did it just completely catapult itself up and then catapult itself down like a brick, pretty much? So that is a question, but certainly a turning point in the chart when we saw this particular area taken out and the high there. 29 would have been the area that you'd want to get in at, but now the second opportunity in my mind is around about 46.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Now, I also want to talk about NVIDIA because they've just, we will bring that in a second. So NVIDIA, we've just had some data out of NVIDIA, and let's have a look at this chart as well. Not a very attractive looking chart, is it? Let's look on the dailies. Yeah, inverted head and shoulders on NVIDIA. I like this one as well. I've liked this one for quite some time. I think if we are looking at a NVIDIA for a potential play with Bitcoin and the like, I think this is a great company to look at.
Well, these dudes are blockchain people, yeah.
They are part of that is one of the aspects of their company. Yes.
So they actually develop blockchain. Are they responsible for blockchain?
I think that they, from what I gather, and the guys listening in are much more educated in this than I am. But from what I gather, they supply the the platform for blockchain to be created. I don't think they're actually directly linked to blockchain. I just think that they supply some of the technology so it can be created.
The mining equipment, says Crystal. Okay, cheers.
Yes, yes.
That's
So
becoming a very unpopular thing to do, as I understand it, because of electricity costs. If you've got solar power, you can run your operation on solar power or some other means.
yeah,
Then
which but interestingly with that, if it starts to take out some players, then that actually the lack of supply could actually start boosting prices up
yes, yes,
as
it does.
well.
That's true.
Yeah. So that would be an aspect. I mean, another thing about Nvidia, which is of interest, is that they don't only find themselves in that particular arena. I think they are also in the arena of um, graphic cards and other things. Now, as I say, there's some
Yeah,
news.
every time my computer's crashed in the past, like I see an NVIDIA thing coming up on the root directory.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Now there was some news on the video which we'll have a look at in a second. Chips for AI, cars, cloud computing. I mean, I think this is a great stock to try and get into. So, I think Nvidia is an opportunity, and I'd be really interested in buying it. When we look again at the financials, then just a quick summary. Earnings per share very weak. The margins are decent and growing. Not great numbers, are they? The turnover is very weak as well. So that's seen Nvidia down. I just want to quickly check what the let's have a look. What the announcement is from Nvidia, because there was something. Oops.
Certainly a strong sector, Christo.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely a great sector. Now, where's the news on that? Because they were about buying something. Let's have a look. We'll talk about the FTSE in a second. Okay. Can't see what the announcement is. We're gonna have to look into this in further detail. We don't have a lot of time here. But there was something that I was seeing. I thought they were going to acquire another company, but Nvidia, I think, are going to be of interest. We're going to bring this back to the charts a little bit. Oh, incidentally, the belt hold that we were just looking at. Where's the belt hold that we were looking at also exists on Nvidia.
Yeah, okay.
With this bar here, that was Friday. Gap to the downside, closing at its highs. That's a really strong signal for a push to the upside. So the charts look pretty good. If we're just going on a couple of aspects here, I'd want to see this on shorter term time frames as well. Let's see if we get the intraday trade. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to trade this intraday, you'd probably use the same. You'd use the same technique. You want to make sure that it's going to get above this particular level. So, I think Nvidia is a buy around about 160. If I saw it break and come back into this area, I think this is a buy at 160. So, a little bit of patience, but let's see what happens with Nvidia for the day, and see if there's a buying opportunity with that particular stock. but I like that. I like Nvidia. Nvidia would be probably something that I would personally potentially look at buying even as late or as early as the end of today when the US market opens up. I want to see how this moves because I may well be investing in this by the end of today.
Happy days.
So Nvidia, and quickly look at Bitcoin to see whether that's going to help that particular share out any. I don't think it will necessarily, but let's have a look. Bitcoin has had pretty interesting moves recently where it looks like it's trying to carve out at a little bottom here, but has been rejected. No, it's got to that point. It's also got to that point, and it's rejected this particular area here. So so Bitcoin doesn't really fill the particular stock option with a great deal of cheer, but looks like also something of a symmetrical triangle. So a break to the upside with Bitcoin would certainly help Nvidia out. I think there's probably some significant downside still left in Bitcoin, but I think if we are going to look at a company that could actually benefit from the move in Bitcoin, then Nvidia would be a good one. And it looks to me like we are trying to carve out a support line with Nvidia. And if the announcement that I thought that I read is in existence, then it looks like we might have even potentially had a trigger. So that's that. Now we're going to be closing up in about 3 minutes. I just want to finally talk about the FTSE, and I'm sure you'll have other things to look at as well, mate. But
yeah, a couple.
Finally, looking at the FTSE 100, those scalpers would have been unfortunately frustrated this morning because the market has popped up and now looks like it is on the hourly chart starting to give us a sell signal. So they won't be too happy, but this is some of the benefit of being a hedge trader rather than a stop trader. So stops would have been triggered in this area, but look what's happened. Started to move back to the downside. We're starting to get a fairly clear indication of a tower top here on the 15-minute chart. So that does suggest further downside is potentially going to ensue here. So likely to see that weekly pivot now in the next hour, probably, and maybe even lower from this point. But I think this does start to become interesting as we get a 4-hour close as well. That would suggest that we probably are looking at some fairly significant downside, I think, for the FTSE to start the morning off. Whether that's tradable, I'm not 100% clear, but this particular bar on the 4-hour would suggest that we probably are looking for downside rather than upside. Area of resistance, area of potential resistance with the left shoulder and right shoulder. So I may well trade this. I'm just going to see how this reacts around that weekly pivot, but I may well trade this to see if I can get another push lower here.
Okie doke. All done?
Yeah, in fact, I will trade it. I'm going to trade this short in the next few minutes.
All right, I'll come back to you then. The one I'm looking at most closely at the moment is Aussie CAD, and we've got 50 seconds for this candle to close. What I'd like to see it close beyond this 94.52.7 level as I've got it. In other words, I want it to dip a little bit further, and then it becomes a potential trade for me. It's tricky though because we're at the wrong part of the cycle here. To get into this long, you're probably better off getting into it down here, no question. There is room, however, to take profit before yesterday's high, and on that basis, I'd be willing to take a small trade here. Now, it's tricky because you've got the Aussie, if we go back to the Aussie, at that resistance level I spoke about, but it's also primed to go long. So timing here is just absolutely crucial. And you've got the CAD. I haven't got a dollar CAD chart, but I'm looking at oil because oil and the CAD are very, very closely related. Oil is at a resistance level, been going long for 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th day. If you can break there, then fair enough. But I would have thought, this is a 4-hour chart we're looking at now, I would have thought there's resistance here. So this is likely to pull back towards the pivots, bringing the CAD back with it, in my opinion. So this is a trade, but it's so tricky, and I hesitate to put you guys into it because the management of this is going to be similar to the management of the euro pound last Thursday. Because if we can't get through this high quickly, then I don't want to be in the trade. This needs to accelerate through here and take this high out very quickly, or I don't want to be in the trade, as I said. So I'm likely to move my stop to entry very quickly, depending on what happens at this level, or I'll take profit here if we just get to that level and move my stops the same amount. Let's say it's 6 pips. I take 6 pips of profit here. I move my stop the same amount from entry than where it would be normally, which would be under here. You'd have to put your stop under here, I believe. So take it or leave it. That's what it is. Again, it's risky because you are trading at resistance, but I think this can probably go. The other ways, Aussie yen, wait for the pullback and find something down here. Aussie dollar, exactly the same scenario. Wait for the pullback and look for something down here. That is where I'm at, mate. It's a little bit tricky on Aussie CAD, so if you're afraid of it in any way, shape, or form, don't go into it. But there's probably a way to manage it to make money.
Okay, mate. Sounds good. I am going to trade the FTSE at some point today, but not necessarily just yet.
Okay.
Not just yet. I mean, there's certainly information here which would suggest that we've reached a decent point of resistance. There's a couple of areas that are still a little bit glaring, and that's this area is a little bit concerning. I would suggest that if price pops back to the upside. Yeah, that's close enough, actually. If price pops back to the upside and gives me this this price again, I'm going to trade it low. I'm going to trade it short. The other area that I am interested in is this point here. Looks like a decent closing price, so maybe around about the 71.50, so about 7 pips higher, and I may well trade that short. Depends what it looks like, but there's enough here which would suggest some downside. Weekly pivot's a little close, and that's the issue, which is why I wouldn't mind seeing if I could get the high of the bar again, just getting some price action, which was a little bit uncertain. Brexit is going to be an issue, so we've got to be a little bit careful. Whether we trade it, but as I say, I think there's enough information here which would suggest downside may well be the direction for this particular period. So yeah, just got to look at it and let it unfold, mate. Right now, I don't see a clear setup which would suggest either of these two prices. So it's going to be either the high here or this high up here, I think. Or let the weekly pivot get taken out and let this start to trend, because it's just about held on to the level here, which would suggest that the bulls are still interested. So let's let this develop. But as I say, we've got another show coming up soon, haven't we? So let's
in 25 minutes or so. Those of you guys who aren't aware of that, there's a free show every Monday evening that brings in 4 of the senior traders from Actions to Wealth, not only Ash and myself, but the boss man and our most senior and successful trader is also in there as well. So great opportunity for you to get some insights into what they are thinking, and we are. I guess Ash and I won't change too much, but Actions to Wealth Facebook page, you'll probably get a link to that, I think. Not 100% sure. Would that be right, Ash? Or certainly the Actions to Wealth website, actionswealth.com. You should be able to get a link to that or request one. Highly recommend you go in there. It's a good show.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, buddy. Well, I'll speak to you in about 25.
All right, mate. Happy days.
And Christo, thanks for the heads up with those other 2 stocks to look at as well. I think we'll look at those tomorrow, Amazon and SoftBank. Might look at Amazon. I'm not sure what the price is on that, but we'll have a look at that, and we'll look at SoftBank as well and see if there's opportunities there. Okay, guys, enjoy yourselves, and we will be back same trade time, same trade channel tomorrow. Thank you very much, Christo, for all your participation. Really appreciate it, mate. All really, really good information, and also potentially some opportunities here for us all to take. So thanks so much for that, buddy. And we will speak to you maybe later, but certainly tomorrow. See you later, buddy. Speak to you in 25 minutes.
Right, mate. Have a good one, guys.